In a clear indictment, a disappointed President Muhammadu Buhari yesterday told the security agencies that they were not doing enough to end the security challenges in the country. Despite enormous logistics provided by his administration, Buhari frowned on the fact that his previous directive to the military to end insecurity in the country had not yielded much results. The directive from the commander-in-chief to his men, rescue all Nigerian terrorist captives unhurt. State House correspondent Tadisu Omorwa reports.
Bring us alive back, please. We're appealing to the government to do something.
From the north to the south, Nigeria is witnessing an uptick in security challenges, with series of incidents involving criminal armed gangs, leaving hundreds dead and many more taken into captivity. These latest round of attacks have necessitated the president's meeting with heads of security agencies and some ministers. It comes after recommendations by the National Council of State. After the meeting, which lasted close to 4 hours, the National Security Advisor announced that President Buhari has directed the rescue of all kidnapped Nigerians as a top priority for security agencies.
The Kaduna train incident was like the last straw breaking the camel's back. The president is using that as a reference point to let the security agencies know that they have an obligation to get everybody, every innocent soul that is in captivity out of captivity.
With restive countries like Niger and Chad battling insurgents for years, the Nigerian government says the country's porous borders would also be getting more attention to keep them safe from infiltration despite the ECOWAS protocols on free movement.
All of us know that we have problems of infiltration by virtue of the fact that we have a very large economy. It attracts a lot of people from outside and they come in illegally. So we want to see how we can replicate that type of effort we put in the maritime domain on our land borders.
The recent claims by Kaduna State Governor Nasiru El-Rufai that the whereabouts of terrorists and other attackers are known has raised questions about the intelligence gathering capabilities and utilization of such intelligence by security agencies. But the National Security Advisor had this to say.
Even if they say we know where they are, that in itself is already a problem. Because once you say it, whether it is true or false, the person who has your people in captivity will move to another location. It's just as simple as that. So sometimes it's best to just keep silent. Mum is the word.
The government is also asking Nigerians to provide intelligence to help expose perpetrators of terrorism and other forms of violence against the country so that the security agencies can achieve more results.
A lot to unpack this morning, Tundu.
Yeah, I'm going to start with where Adeswa left it, talking about intelligence gathering, and that was also among the details in today's This Day report on this same briefing by the National Security Advisors. How will people feel comfortable in sharing intelligence with the security agencies when even the National Security Advisor in that report acknowledged that there are rogue elements among them? This is really the issue. And I think it's important that we're finally hearing President Muhammadu Buhari acknowledge that the security agents have been found wanting here. It's important because if you do not acknowledge that there's a problem, you have no hope of solving it. He has said he seems frustrated at the moment. The logistics have been provided and nothing is happening. So what that suggests to me is that you have to go to the good book right now, the ultimate depository of wisdom here. Whoever is lazy in his work is a brother to he who destroys. If you, as a security agent, cannot fish out the terrorists, rescue people, then you are a brother to the terrorists. It's really that simple. So it has to go beyond saying there are rogue elements, the logistics are not being used. Actually, they are being used. They're being used against us, quite frankly, at this point. Those rogue elements have to be investigated. They have to be prosecuted. Something has to be done because this battle is impossible without intelligence. People cannot give intelligence if they don't feel secure. If you do go and give intelligence and then you're exposed to the very terrorists that you've reported and they come and have some kind of reprisal attack against you, your family, your whole community, of course you're going to keep mum, to borrow Major General Mongono's word there. And I just feel like it's about time something is done. It's good that this has been acknowledged, but I would want President Buhari to go beyond sort of hand-wringing dismay. As a president of Nigeria and Commander-in-Chief, you are not helpless. Something has to be done. You have now acknowledged, thankfully, that all those marching orders are to no effect. So let us now have sack letters, perhaps. Something must be done here. I hadn't quite finished. I just also want to say on the silver lining end of things, which I always like to point out, at least Nigeria has recorded improvements in our maritime security. It was good to hear that from the NSA and him saying that that could be replicated with our land borders. Thank goodness for that.
Okay, one, I think that the president saying he's disappointed. I think, yes, he's in a position to say that he's disappointed. He may even be allowed to use the word frustrated because he says, and it's the NSA, General Mongono himself, our national security advisor, reporting this to journalists at the presidential villa, that the president says he's thoroughly disappointed because he had made security a priority task for his administration. And he made resources available, he so claims. And now he summoned the service chiefs and he told them, look, I'm disappointed. And he gave orders. All the intelligence and operational units of the Nigerian security, apparatus should go and free those persons who were kidnapped during the March 28th assault on the Kaduna-bound train from Abuja. And he also said government has tried its best. You people are not delivering. Now, what I find interesting here is that the president is saying more or less the same things as the House of Representatives. You recall that his House of Representatives had an extraordinary session. 2 motions of urgent national importance were tabled, and the resolve from that particular session of the House of Representatives was that the National Security Advisor should be removed, that the Minister of Defense should be removed. The House of Representatives also said that the government and the legislature, had made resources available to, security chiefs to be able to make significant progress. And at 3, they suspect that, these security chiefs are not delivering because they are enjoying the privilege and the largesse coming from the generosity of government in providing necessary logistics and finance to deal with the problem. Well, we did not hear from General Mongono that the president addressed the concerns of the National Assembly in this regard. But many Nigerians will say, well, of what use is the removal of service chiefs? We have removed service chiefs before and again and again. What happened? So in that regard also, the meeting that was held with the service chiefs along with the National Security Advisor, in terms of the outcomes, reported by both the National Security Advisor and the Inspector General of Police, your basic response should be, well, deja vu. We have had this before. The president giving orders, the president saying that he's not happy, and the NSA coming where the president cannot be happy, So they have just 7 months to go. For how long would they be saying we are not happy? We are disappointed. And that's why I keep saying that, the job of the next president of Nigeria, whoever he is, wherever he comes from, has been cut out for him. It is very clear that this administration may not be able to solve the problem. However, from what the National Security Advisor said, he addressed certain specific things as part of the outcome. One, apart from telling us that the president is not happy, all of us are not happy too. The president is not alone. You know, all the families of the people who have been kidnapped, they are not happy. The people who get attacked, they are not happy. So the country is in a state of unhappiness.
Yes.
Now, second, it says technology. You know, the president has been very strong on the issue of technology. The National Security Advisor says technology is expensive. And because it's expensive, it is difficult to deploy technology at this time. So which means that the train tragedy that occurred, there was nothing anybody could do about it because the NSA is telling us that these things are expensive and it will take time. How much more time will it take? 7 more months? Third, he said that citizens should get involved, that security is a collective effort. He's right in that regard. Okay? But as Tundu said, who is going to come forward and give information? Even the information that they are given, do they act on it? Which was Nasir El-Rufai's point, Governor of Kaduna State, that they have intelligence, they don't act on it. So which person will put his own head on the block and say he's assisting with information that will not be acted upon? He says a lot has been done in terms of maritime security in the last 1 year, and that Nigeria has been commended. Fine. So after the National Security Advisor spoke, the Inspector General of Police also spoke and said, look, Operation Secure the Restore Peace in the Southeast, that they are intensifying it, and they will not allow anybody to kill any policeman. Fine. We don't want any policeman to lose his life. But the bigger task for the Nigerian police is the security and welfare of the Nigerian people.
Yes.
And if we have policemen who are running away from bandits, policemen who are hiding, what kind of thing are we talking about?
Yeah.
So the president has every right to be disappointed, to be angry, but beyond being emotional about it, as has been reported, what will he do next? Will he listen to the lawmakers in the House of Representatives? Yeah. Will he ask the service chiefs to account for all the logistics and all the funds that they have been supported with?
So, for me, the president can be angry, but he should not forget that the buck stops with him. His anger should be channeled into finding solutions to the problem, because the buck stops with him. And I'm happy that he too have said that we failed in terms of security. Albeit now he's blaming the security chiefs of failure. But if the security chiefs fail, it is the nation that fails in terms of security. So please, when we make analysis tomorrow and say there's a failure of security, some people should not say, because the president too indirectly has said now that we failed in terms of security. Furthermore, I wish I had a lot of time. There are a lot of things I wanted to break down, but I'll see if I can do it in 30 seconds. Furthermore, there are many layers to this. All of this is centered around political will. Because I don't have time, but I'll say this. The day we are ready to end insecurity in Nigeria, it will end. When we are not ready to end it, we keep giving directives. Directives will continue upon directive. But when we are ready to end it, we will end it. I wouldn't say more than that. That's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll have Rodu Sodiri, Michael Wisi Adeso Omora, Aaron Akira to give us updates on Africa global business, COVID-19 and sporting activities across the globe.
Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Arise News. For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. A lot of interest rate rise chat overnight as far as Asia's concerned. Last night in Washington and overnight as well. The result of that is that Asia Pacific stocks are down, most of them by about 1% this morning. The Nikkei down as well. Hong Kong's Hang Seng down too, and also mainland stocks in China declined as well. Many factory workers are finding it very difficult to get back to work in Shanghai. Shanghai, where there's been that lockdown, which is a major industrial hub. In the last week, authorities announced a whitelist of 660 odd companies that will actually get priority for resumption of work. It's really, though, just a question of getting those workers to those particular factors because of the other lockdowns around industrial output in Shanghai, down about 7%. Doesn't seem like a lot, but we'll get some further figures on that later on, I think, in the month. As far as the United States is concerned, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, now we were looking to see what he was going to say and was looking to see what Andrew Bailey, they're both at the World Bank /IMF conference in Washington, and he is underlining the fact that we're going to get a big interest rate rise, about 0.5%, I think, in May. He's saying it's absolutely essential to restore price stability. Just to continue with his quote, it's appropriate in my view to be moving a little more quickly to raise interest rates. So you have been warned. So stock futures, therefore, slightly flat, really, as far as yesterday was concerned. The hawkish notion, it shouldn't have surprised a lot of people, but apparently the markets did go down. They were apparently surprised by that hawkishness. I don't see why, because it's been an underlying, we've been talking about it for weeks, it seems to me, on this program, and the bet is only how much and when it will actually happen, and it definitely looks like May now. Elon Musk is mulling a tender offer for Twitter now. Takes attention. Remember, we've got those big figures from Tesla yesterday about how they'd actually met a lot of their delivery targets, and they're doing rather well. What this tender offer means, he's going to go to individual shareholders and try and buy the shares from them. He's got $46.5 billion to help finance this. CNN have stopped their streaming service, CNN Plus, stopped this just a month after its launch. New owners, Warner Brothers Discovery, decided that it really wasn't worth doing, apparently. So they've closed it down, and that's going to mean a lot of job losses as far as CNN's concerned, and certainly the person in charge of that has already resigned. Ukraine's been talking by video link to the World Bank, their meeting in New York, which we were talking about earlier on. Their president's been saying that they will need at least $7 billion a month to put right the war damage in that country. That's what they're saying right now. I suspect it may well be a little more than that by the time they finish. Consumer confidence in the UK, unsurprisingly, has cratered. Retail sales down 1.4%. People are just not buying non-essential items, and more importantly, not going on non-essential drives as well because of the high price of fuel. And in line with Jay Powell, the Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey, talking in Washington, again saying that, it's a very, very tight road between raising interest rates and starving the economy and causing stagflation. That's the job, unfortunately. Fortunately, Mr. Bailey, that's what you've got to do. A new trade deal with Northern Ireland will be given, the ministers there will be given the opportunity to rip up the present trade deal and try to bring in the unionists in Northern Ireland who are worried about friction on the borders with the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland as far as trade's concerned. That one will run and run. As far as the United Kingdom is concerned, and India, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson wants a trade deal. Apparently, no nation, get this, no nation drinks whiskey as much as India actually does, and that's a good part of the Highland exporters. The Scotch Whisky Association is actually quite liking that. And finally, as we head into the weekend, oil markets are, given what's going on in the world, surprisingly quiet. That's the global view.
About oil markets being quiet with all the madness going on in the world. But I'd like to ask about Andrew Bailey this morning, because isn't it disturbing enough that the little wealth anybody has in the UK is being creamed off by inflation, and you're still trying to juxtapose that decision with a stable market by not increasing interest rates? I mean, I don't get the dynamics of the economics, Andrew Bailey is putting forward here. Are you not supposed to stop the tide that is creaming off wealth from people, making their life miserable, making them take out more credit card loans? And secondly, is this an ego trip for Elon Musk? He's finally financed he's finally got the finance of $46.5 billion to buy Twitter. Twitter is not a money-making company. It's just going to be another tied-down asset. So what does he need it for? Is this for free speech?
Yeah, I do. I think that he sees himself as a prime exponent of free speech. And as we've discussed before, it's all right saying these kind of things. There is no such thing as free speech. There is speech which is untrammeled by other people's demands, other people's opinions, and all the rest of it. But to make out it's free somehow is madness. And it certainly will not happen with Twitter. Twitter has navigated itself into being self-regulatory as the moment. What Musk appears to be suggesting, and of course all this could change with another tweet from him. Isn't it ironic that he's been using Twitter all this time to actually show us what's going on with his own company, Tesla? However, that said, there's no such thing. I think that companies, particularly in the social media, are not going to be strangled, but they're going to find that regulatory concerns are actually getting quite strong. And it wouldn't, if I were as rich as Musk, not that I am, if I were, I wouldn't be looking at Twitter. I certainly would not be wanting to get involved with social media at all. I do feel as though, and we've often talked about this, people think it's great fun to have freedom of speech. It actually isn't. It can be extremely damaging to our families. It can be extremely damaging to our children. And it can be extremely damaging to people who, not necessarily of their own fault, don't know any better and get infected by what actually is supposed to be free speech. So no, as far as that's concerned. Andrew Bailey, self-confessed, does have a bit of job on his hands, doesn't he? What he's trying to do is to keep stability going. But I have to say that he would not have been unaware of what Jay Powell was saying in Washington, given that both of them are there. It sounds like a coordinated "we told you so" coming up, and I think interest rates are going to rise. The thing is that the markets, and again, let's put our focus on those to start with, even though there are individual stories of hardship amongst us, the markets actually like, in inverted commas, the fact, or like the least worst option of keeping a control on inflation, which I think we do. I've lived personally, you're not old enough, but I've certainly lived through very, very high inflation in this country, and it was not funny at all. I'm talking interest rates between 17 and 18%, and mortgages 20, 21, 22, 23%. That's a big, big amount to pay, and that really focused our attention on what the important things in life were. And unfortunately, at that time, it was servicing the loans we'd taken out, because that's how you buy a house.
Well, Michael, we're not done yet. I wanted to take you up on Shanghai. 25 million people, the businesses, the companies there have been suffering since a lockdown was imposed on March 28. Now, this week, the authorities released a list of 666 companies that can return to productive activity. But those companies are facing logistical challenges, and they cannot recruit new workers, because part of the clause from the Chinese authorities is that, look, the persons have to live within the production site. And that seems like it's not possible. And in any case, the people don't want to go out anyway in the face of the zero COVID strategy that China insists upon. Do you think that the Chinese authorities, claiming that the death rate has gone up, they just reported 8 more deaths, even if nobody trusts statistics from China, do they need to review the protocols for these companies, realizing the fact that Shanghai is the major manufacturing hub, accounts for 3.4% of China's GDP in terms of manufacturing? That's the first one. The second one, Zelensky is asking for more or less a Marshall Plan from the rest of the world. Will he get it? The IMF chief, Kristalina Georgieva, is non-committal. Some countries are saying, okay, seize Russian assets should be used to rebuild Ukraine, and that Ukraine, has suffered about 60 billion loss. He is asking for 7 billion, per month. Where is that money going to come from? Would there be cooperation among the big countries to even help Ukraine, given the contradictions that we have seen in their responses so far?
If you remember, the Marshall Plan was done under very different circumstances. Well, at the end of the Second World War, a deliberate ploy to get Europe back on its feet again. And I'm sure it would be naive not to expect that there was a lot of political toing and froing as far as that was concerned as well, to make sure that those European countries were coming under the influence of the United States and the Allies rather than Russia, because the talks had already taken place at Yalta, hadn't they, all those years before? So that's really going back a long way. I happen to believe I don't like poor neighbours. I think it's wrong. I think that I'm not exactly sure whether it's the IMF or the World Bank's job to get involved in state by state politics, but I think it's entirely possible that this we will need. Let's hope this war comes to an end fairly quickly, and we will need to rebuild Ukraine. We might even need to rebuild parts of Russia as well. So there are all sorts of challenges coming up, and I would not be the one to even think about that right now. But that's what we're facing. It's no point in beggaring nations, because if they're neighbours, they will still need help. The world happens to work better under globalisation. I think it did. It doesn't anymore, because globalisation has now more or less disappeared. But I feel that if you want to succeed, no man is an island, and we do need to recognise that we are going to have to help Ukraine and possibly Russia too.
Well, thank you very much,
Mr. Wilson. Yeah. Our dependable Rotus Adiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Tunde. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all our viewers. Yeah, so Adefemi Akinsanya has been our international correspondent, has been, boots on the ground at the IMF World Bank spring meetings. She spoke with Godwin Emefiele, Central Bank Governor of Nigeria, who is there. And, Nigeria has responded to the World Bank's demand or suggestion, not demand, suggestion to reduce fuel subsidies and also, provide a single exchange rates window and basically floats the naira. So he spoke about subsidies, also reiterated the fact that once the Dangote refinery comes on stream, fuel prices aren't going to come down. So I'm glad to see that the federal government is now, continuing to toe that line, that we shouldn't expect fuel prices to drop just because the Dangote refinery comes on stream. But here he is responding to the suggestion on the single exchange rate window and floating the naira.
What I'd like to say is that both the IMF and World Bank are prime development partner institutions, and from time to time they will provide advice that will go home to work with. Even at some of our very private meetings, what we come up with is they say, look, we realize that different countries will have different challenges. But what we do expect is that you go back and develop your own homegrown solution that helps your situation. Let me say that Nigeria is on a managed float. What that also means is that we cannot adopt what is being proposed, that we go on a free float of the currency. Doing that will create an exchange rate spiral for Nigeria, as long as the demand surpasses the supply of foreign exchange in Nigeria.
All right, so the FX situation is one of supply, and the governor has continually repeated that. For those who say that there should be a single exchange rate and you should float the naira, you've seen this happen in Egypt when Egypt collected $12 billion from the IMF and they were told to float their currency. I think inflation spiked about 30-35%. So in the short term, you will see a spike because of the limited supply and also because of speculators. To the central bank's point, there has to be a handbrake in order to mitigate that, which is why we use a managed float. But how do you address the supply issue? Where does the bulk of our supply come from? It comes from oil, which is why you've got the RT200 program that is supposed to boost non-oil exports, hopefully 200 billion in 3 to 5 years. But if you look at what's happened in the United Arab Emirates, other Saudi Arabia and so on, these are the oil producing countries. They've used petrodollars to boost their non-oil sectors of the economy. So you still need that. So but in Nigeria's case, Nigeria has to sell other stuff that brings in, or products that bring in foreign exchange, whether it's services and other items. The singular dependence on oil is where all these FX issues come from, and the central bank is forced to basically ration, which is why you're seeing the situation that we have. So, I mean, yeah, you will conserve your 39 billion in reserves if you were to take the handbrake off, but it is anyone's guess where the exchange rate will go, and the impact it would have on anyone that's importing anything into the country would be severe. We move on to Zainab Ahmed. She gave an interview, was granted an interview on Bloomberg, and she talked about a number of things from the fuel subsidy. She also said that oil prices, high oil prices in Nigeria are a net negative. I also talked about debt, whether or not Nigeria is going to go back to the global markets. She said she'll focus more on the domestic markets. Here's Zainab Ahmed.
One shock after another, it's been very difficult to manage. But the current high crude oil prices is supposed to be an opportunity for Nigeria, but it's for us now, currently it's a mixed bag, because even though we're an oil-producing country, we also import refined petroleum products. So as the crude oil prices rise, it means we are having to pay more for the products that we import. And also in country, we are still supporting petroleum subsidy in the country. So the net effect for us is nil or negative, depending on how high the price has gone. The Ukraine-Russia war is causing another wave of global economic distortion, and we're very much affected in the sense that energy prices are high, and comes with the high energy prices means increasing cost of transportation that is reflecting also in increasing cost of food.
All right, and also Kenya. Let's get to Kenya. Power issues in Kenya. The Kenyan government has delayed the 15% cuts in tariffs. Why? Well, they haven't talked to the independent power producers yet. Back early in the year, I think it was late December, they said that by March 31st, there will be a 15% cut. Independent power producers in Kenya pushed back and said, hey, listen, your quasi-socialist move that you're trying to implement here doesn't really work with our free market structure, because we have put investments in this sector, and you can't just ask us to reduce the costs of what it costs us to generate power. So the government said that they would talk to the independent power producers, and by March 31st, this would have been resolved. Where in April now, it hasn't happened. The crux of this issue is the cost at which the government, or rather, what the government will pay the IPPs for what they bring, for what it costs them to bring power, to generate power. So essentially, it has to be above what it is that it costs them, so which is essentially almost subsidizing it again. But they haven't, because the costs are high, they have not approached them to talk about it. So I think Kenya, what's happening there is that they've made too many promises with the election this year. LPG, they want to intervene. Fuel subsidies, they want to intervene. Electricity tariff, they want to intervene. It's one too many, and it's coming back to bite them.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So thank you for making that point. It reminds me of what's happening in Turkey now, with the leader of the opposition making a huge show of sitting in his house in complete darkness. He's refused to pay his electricity bill because it's too high. He's been cut off, and that's part of his protest, being one with the people and what have you. So that's what's happening in Kenya, these populist measures. But I want to go back to your point that you were making about CBN Governor Emefiele talking about the spiral that would happen if the handbrake that you mentioned is pulled with regards to exchange rate. He talked about Egypt and their short-term suffering. But what happened in the long term with Egypt?
In the long term, things moderated. And
of course they did.
Yeah, they did.
My point exactly.
But Tunde, so 1 second. The thing is, with Egypt, though, Egypt has tourism revenue. They've got other buffers. They've got more options than Nigeria when it comes to FX. So they, over a period of time, with their exports and other things, they're able to bring. So that's the challenge. Where else do we go outside of oil?
Well, the thing to note, in my view, is that the World Bank, the IMF, both Bretton Woods institutions, have been very inconsistent in advising Nigeria about policy options, particularly with regard with the state of our exchange rate, the multiple exchange rate that we have. The CBN governor calls it a managed float exchange rate. And he says Nigeria, every country has its own peculiar challenges. What are those peculiar challenges in Nigeria? That's the question to ask. Because the CBN had introduced a number of interventions, including trying to control speculators, these bureau de change speculators and all of that. is it that the main peculiar challenge that Nigeria has is that policies don't work here? The second thing is that we've been on this issue of the exchange rate for a very long time, and it has to do with the fortunes of the Naira. I must have mentioned their names on this program before. Henry Olujumiboyo and Adagofua Ojomaikre, who wrote columns, tons, volumes of newspaper columns on how if Nigeria did not save the Naira, we will get to precisely this kind of situation. The CBN governor says he's focused on trying to liaise with the fiscal authorities in Nigeria to make sure that there is a proper alignment with monetary policy. But I think the big challenge that we face, I don't know whether you have to define those peculiar challenges, is that there is a problem with policy. The second thing is that Zainab Ahmed seems to be saying something different from the CBN governor. And if I'm wrong, let me know, because the two of them were more or less contradicting each other. The CBN governor was talking about forward-looking methods. He was talking about non-oil exports and all of that. But at the same time, the finance minister was saying, our hopes rest on Dangote refinery. You recall that the country representative of the World Bank said, look, Nigeria cannot rely on that because Dangote refinery is a business. They will sell at international price. They may help with domestic supply, but because it's a business, except government is willing to subsidize Dangote refinery when it comes on stream, which is supply. And yet we have earmarked 4 trillion, about 4 trillion naira now, approved by the National Assembly as subsidy. The World Bank is saying, no, that subsidy is not sustainable. And, the finance minister is saying, even at a high price, we cannot sustain it. She's on all fours in that submission with the group managing director of the NNPC, who has also said high prices, of spot price of crude oil will not help us. So there's no clarity here. But I think it is good that they responded, but I don't think that will effect a change in the position of those foreign agencies that analyze our circumstances.
So let's be careful with our currency. All right? We're doing a managed float. We've got peculiarities. We keep talking about America. You remember what happened when America got off the gold standard? Yep. You remember what happened to the dollar? Yep. There was a level of hyperinflation. I hear and they were printing single $1,000 notes. At the time. Single $1,000 notes. In fact, some people still keep those $1,000 notes as memorabilia. One note, $1,000 after they left the gold system. So let's be careful. We have peculiarities. We're not like Egypt. Egypt has got buffers. Egypt is collecting even billions. If you hear how much American government gives Egypt for security alone.
What about Saudi Arabia? $15 billion they've pledged to them already.
We don't have those buffers here. Because over the years, we have not developed those industries. The first and second industrial plan, we didn't do anything. Maybe if Ajaokuta was working, maybe we'll have been getting some revenue from steel. Maybe if DSC was working, but we don't have that. We are not largely industrialized. We are not making television sets. We are not making everything. We are not making all of that. That's a big problem on ground. I hear we need to go. I had so much to say.
I know. We're establishing more churches.
For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Adeswa Moro is here with us. Adeswa, great to have you. Good morning.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Tundu. And good morning, Dr. Bati.
Morning.
Yeah.
Well, a bit of morning, guys. A bit of cheering news as we look at the Johns Hopkins University tally for the last time this week. Well, the WHO has now provided the weekly epidemiological report. And I can tell you that the global reported COVID-19 cases continue to be on a decline. Well, the WHO says that between April 11th and 17th, 5.59 million cases were reported as against what we saw in the previous week. The number of deaths also dropped by 21% to 18,215 deaths worldwide. Now, the decline is said to be in every region. The World Health Body is, however, asking that this trend be interpreted with caution. Now, despite the declining trend globally, we saw some countries churning out those increased numbers of cases and deaths. Well, in the week under review, the highest numbers of reported cases came from South Korea, which reported more than 900 172,000 cases. France followed quickly with over 827,000 infections, and Germany came to third with more than 769,000 infections. While the highest number of deaths for the last 7 days the highest numbers came in from the US with 3,076 deaths. Russia came in second with 1,784 fatalities, and South Korea turned out or reported 1,671 deaths in the last 7 days. Well, in Nigeria, only 9 new infections were reported from the nation's capital, Abuja, and Lagos. And since the last time we looked at the data from the NCDC, there's been 1 COVID-19 related death reported in Nigeria, bringing the death toll from the pandemic in the country to 3,143. Now away from those pandemic toll figures, for patients with milder COVID-19 forms who are still at risk of a high hospitalization, the World Health Organization is now strongly recommending Pfizer's COVID-19 antiviral pill called Paxlovid. The WHO experts say Paxlovid prevents hospitalization more than other available alternatives, and it is easier to administer. However, the only concern the UN Health Agency has with the drug is that the inequality in access to COVID-19 vaccines would again leave low and middle income countries at the end of the queue to access this Paxlovid. And that's the only concern they've raised about the drug so far. Well, to the UK, where Prime Minister Boris Johnson's integrity was the whole debate at Parliament yesterday while he was far away in India. If the inquiry by a committee of MPs finds that the Prime Minister lied to Parliament over parties during COVID-19 lockdowns, well, the pressure would definitely intensify for him to resign. But will he resign? We'll keep our fingers crossed. And finally, what we know about COVID-19 keeps changing rapidly, guys. Let me tell you about something that happened in Spain. A 31-year-old healthcare worker tested positive twice for COVID-19 within 20 days. And according to Spanish researchers, that is record time in getting infections, the shortest possible time anybody can get infected with COVID-19, 20 days. The test on this young woman who is fully vaccinated also shows that she was infected with 2 different variants. First, it was the Delta variant in late December, and now with the Omicron in January. Now, this case shows a lot of things, including that the Omicron variant can invade the previous immunity acquired from natural infections or from vaccination. Back to you guys.
I think, well, Adesai, maybe I should ask you, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you said fingers crossed. Which way are you hoping it goes for Boris Johnson? Because it's a complete disaster. It just won't go away. 6 people have lost their jobs. He's been fined. Rishi Sunak has been fined. His wife has been fined. And then I'm going back all the way to the Windrush scandal when Amber Rudd said she inadvertently misled Parliament and had to resign for doing that over targets for how many illegal immigrants the Home Office had removed or had not removed. So it does seem a bit of a stretch now to imagine that Boris Johnson is going to be able to scale through this in his usual greased piglet fashion. The Teflon coating, I think, is starting to chip now because even his own Tory backbenchers are getting really sick of trying to defend the indefensible.
The ultimate penalty for this.
Yes, there's a limit to everything.
With the Privileges Committee of Parliament, with the Privileges Committee of Parliament now initiating a probe, although that probe will not start until the Sugre civil service investigation is completed and the Metropolitan Police investigation is completed. But, you know, last week, the point was made that, look, this was calm before the storm, and that Parliament only needed to return before the storm will begin. And it was Labour, the Labour Party, that instigated this, and even Conservative MPs find it very difficult to defend the indefensible. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is away in India. He's playing what Americans call rose garden politics. But the reality is going to hit him very soon, because the point was well made by Sir Keir Starmer, who said, at stake here, what is under attack is the British principle. And as he defined it, the British principle is simply that truth, integrity, and honesty, matter a lot in British politics. And that's precisely what the Prime Minister has attacked. So there'll be very interesting days ahead. I don't see how Boris Johnson is going to sidestep this. Now, with regard to, the WHO endorsing the Pfizer drug, that's Paxlovid, which they say is the best, the strongest therapeutic, solution that has been found so far. But they express a concern about lower and middle-income countries. How would they get access to it? Okay, this pill, the strongest thing about it is that it can prevent severe sickness and hospitalization, and it will look like a major advancement. Okay, how will it get to the poor countries of the world who may not be able to afford it? There's also Monopravir, which is the one developed by Merck, the rival company to Pfizer, where Monopravir has not been rated as high as Paxlovid, but how does it, both drugs, either of them even, get to low and middle income countries? That's the big question. The other issue that WHO has had to deal with is to revise its position with regard to remdesivir. You recall that some Nigerian researchers at the time recommended it, and it was controversial. But now WHO is saying that in some cases, remdesivir can also be considered.
All right. For me, it's Boris Johnson. I think he has to go. And I think the Metropolitan Police should stop this connivance with Boris Johnson. The Metropolitan Police has said that they will stop issuing updates of the Partygate scandal leading up to the local elections. I think that is unfair, and that is not good for the British people. The British people deserve a right to know all the shenanigans Boris Johnson has been doing all this while, so that they can use that to make election decisions against him. Local elections are coming up, and I think they must release, those proceedings of that scandal. The Metropolitan, they must back down. The Metropolitan Police must back down.